Hey guys, so in this video we're going to talk about maximizing your open or free sparring. So last week I did a live stream with Tomo from Martial Geeks and we touched on the question about efficacy of open sparring. Just to get a few things out the way. Technical sparring or sequential sparring is absolutely important. Your coach gives you a few sequences to work on and that's it, right? Easy. Positional sparring. Also, another thing where your coaches give you something to work with, right? So that you can get effective in those positions or just understand those positions. These are usually things that happen after a class. That way you can actually figure out the ins and outs of the techniques and concepts taught in that class, right? Put it in a practical setting. So, when it comes to open sparring, how do we maximize what we get out of it? Because, if you look at sequential or technical sparring and positional sparring, that can be more beneficial in terms of context and easier to develop skills. But you need open sparring to put those things together. So, just remember, when it comes to open sparring, your coach is there to keep safety, right? And he's going to guide you. Or she's going to guide you. That's the coach's job. But once again, your coach's guidance might not fully get here. So just remember what the coach does within the classes, that's only 10% of your training. The other 90% is up to you. So let's run through a couple of ideas. First up, record your rounds. Get it on camera. So this way, when a coach gives you notes, you actually have the footage to go check on what he's talking about. Because in your head, in the moment, you might be going like, I'm doing what the coach is saying. But meanwhile, actually you're not. So that way, when you actually look at the recordings, you can see what your coach actually means. Because you're recording rounds, you can actually log your progress. You can actually see bad habits from over a year ago to today, if those are still showing, popping through. You can also see where you have improved. This is important because this is for you to check things and see how you fight. That way, you can actually find a fighter that is similar to you, and then you can actually maybe focus on replicating what that fighter does, because there's a high chance if you are fighting in that particular style, replicating other fighters that fight that similar style is going to work for you. That's feedback that a coach should be giving you already. Work with a game plan. If your game plan is to set up a liver shot or set up a rear naked choke, I work with boxing and jiu-jitsu, so I'm going to keep it relevant there, but the idea applies across the board, right? You must focus on that game plan. Is it going to be difficult if everybody knows that you're going for the liver shot? Yeah, absolutely. This means you have to be creative in finding ways of getting to that liver shot. Taking the back? Yeah, if everybody knows that you're trying to take their back, they're going to defend themselves to prevent you from doing it. This way, when it comes to open or free sparring, you are trying to get to that place. Whereas in positional sparring, you could already start in that place. So this way, you can find ways of getting there. Focus on the goal or the game plan. In terms of boxing, somebody throws a hard punch for some reason, right? And everybody gets caught in that trap beforehand, especially beginners. They want to pay back with a receipt. Now, in terms of fight mindset, if somebody throws a hard right hand and you're still standing, you're not just going to think of getting them back, because that's where you start making the mistakes. A strong right hand probably is going to wobble you, and, with that wobble and that stagnant movement, you're going to try and put pressure on your opponent. You're probably going to get caught out. You're only taught like, okay, that punch caught you. That's the punch that's going to put you down. You're going to avoid that hand, right? So you're going to take a step back and reapproach this. The thing is, if you're focused on paying back with the receipt, that's showing your coach that you are can't control yourself emotionally. And if you can't control your emotions, how are you going to focus on a game plan? It just means your mind gets distracted very easily. In terms of jiu-jitsu, when it comes to that game plan, let's say it's an armbar, right? You don't just crank the armbar. Actually, get the armbar and get it to a controlled position. Obviously, talk with your training partner about this beforehand, and you hold that position before actually sinking in the sub. This way, you start focusing on the control elements of the submission, and also you're giving your partner a chance of escaping. This is going to develop your ability of finishing the armbar a lot better than just cranking it. Because depending on the level of your opponent, that armbar, and you're always missing it because of last minute escapes, then, there's something that has to be addressed there. And it can be addressed in your free sparring already. On that note, you should actually practice mindful meditation. And I'm not talking about this hippie stuff of finding the correct vibes or whatever. Just, let thoughts come and go, and whenever you have a thought, a distraction, just let it go, focus again on the breath. Because this skill comes very handy when it comes to your sparring. Not getting distracted, not getting upset. You focus on your breath and then focus on your game plan once again. Because sparring is just training. It's not about winning rounds. It's not a competitive exercise. It's about developing skill. Add the idea of conditional sparring into it. So, if you haven't done conditional sparring before, that's when your coach gives limitations for you to work with. So, apply this to yourself. If you know you are sparring someone who is, say, of a lower level, focus on just jabs and defense. This way, you give the lower level guy the benefit of working, but also you get to limit yourself and, learn to control the first phase of attack. Jiu-jitsu, let the other guy take your back and work your way defensively out from there, and let the guy work. Because if you are a black belt and you're working with, say, blue belts, you're going to tap them easily. Might as well just, let them work, so that way they can learn and you can get higher level students that will actually improve your training as well. Drop the ego thing, right? Implementing conditions onto yourself, limiting yourself, or what ideas can you get to work with that? Well, essentially, if you are recording your rounds, like stated earlier in this video, you should get ideas of drills and other things that you should limit yourself to in order to, develop skills on where you're lacking. That's where the footage comes in. So you can see for yourself, like, what are you doing, what are you not doing, and what you need to practice. And that should actually give you a game plan to focus on your next rounds of sparring or your next sparring session. The thing is, it takes a while to get that competitive edge out of the sparring mindset, because the idea of it being for development of skills takes a while to actually set it. Next one is talk with your training partners and be greedy with who you choose as a training partner. There are some guys in the gym that you just don't want to spar with because they've got an ego problem, or they're narcissistic, and they always hurt everyone. And some coaches just don't do a great job in controlling the environment. Essentially, if somebody is hurting everyone all the time, the coach should have kicked that person out ages ago. You want to maintain a safe training environment. So, being greedy with your training partners, there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody asks you for a role, but they always hurt people, you're allowed to deny that role. If somebody always comes banging with hard punches and gives people concussions, you can deny sparring with them. The fact that those people are still around and it hasn't been addressed by the coach, then there's a problem there. Get a variety of training partners. On the other hand, you need to get a variety of training partners. Variety of hands is just going to improve your skills, because everybody has a different style. And, it's important to make sure that you can adapt your style to theirs. Also, if you are developing a certain type of strategy or game plan, you can see how effective it truly is. So going to an outside gym for an open mat or for some sparring is never a bad idea. And if your coach says, no, you don't go to other gyms, blah, 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 like, that's a red flag. And make sure when you go to these other gyms that there are safety protocols put into place. You don't want to go pitch up at another place and get injured unnecessarily. Injuries take away from consistency, and it's consistency that's the key to actually developing your skills further. You actually want to try and spar as many times as possible without the risk of injury. In amateur boxing, on average, you could fight once a month. Sometimes it can be more. And then you have to do sparring 2 to 3 times a week, maybe. So, I mean, you don't want to risk injury. When it comes to grappling, I mean, joints can take a beating. As I get older and now being a brown belt, stereotypically, I am getting injured a lot more frequently. So as a result, when it comes to rolling, I don't do hard stuff as often. I don't roll as intensely as often. Just because if I get injured, then it's more time out. And jiu-jitsu is kind of gross in that aspect when it comes to injuries. Okay, guys, that's the advice for now. Happy training, and until next time, take care.